The mansion stretched wide against the quiet horizon, its tall windows catching the fading glow of dusk. Inside, the air was still, so still that every sound seemed magnified. The soft tick of the grandfather clock in the foyer, the distant hum of the air conditioning, even the faint rustle of silk curtains brushing against marble floors. Benjamin Alexander walked through the wide hallway, his polished shoes clicking faintly against creamy marble tiles that reflected the golden lights above. To any visitor, the house was a masterpiece of understated wealth. Open spaces softened by warm beige walls, sleek walnut furniture accented with brushed brass, and carefully chosen art pieces that spoke of taste rather than extravagance. But to Benjamin it was nothing more than a gilded cage. He loosened the tie around his neck and shrugged off his navy blazer, tossing it carelessly over the back of a cream sofa in the living room. The silence pressed on him. It wasn't the peaceful silence of contentment, but the hollow kind, the silence of a man surrounded by everything except the one thing he truly needed. He poured himself a drink from the crystal decanter on the walnut bar cart, watching the amber liquid swirl in the glass. His reflection in the tall mirror behind it caught his eye. A man in his early 30s, tall, dark-skinned, sharp-jawed, and undeniably powerful. A man who had everything. And yet, the loneliness showed in his eyes. Crossing into the sitting lounge, he collapsed onto a wide armchair upholstered in soft leather. The warm glow from the modern chandelier above spilled across the space, illuminating muted rugs and a low oak coffee table stacked with unread books. His fingers tapped restlessly on the armrest. It wasn't the first time Head felt it. That gnawing emptiness. That ache in the center of his chest that money, women, and luxury couldn't fill. Countless women had tried to win his affection. Socialites at galas, models at charity events, even business partners who saw him as the ultimate prize. But their laughter always rang hollow, their conversations empty, their smiles painted. He never felt a spark. Not once. Why does it all feel meaningless? He muttered to himself, staring at the flicker of the fireplace built into the wall. The flames danced against sleek stone, their warmth doing little to touch the cold inside him. Benjamin tilted his head back, closing his eyes. He was 32, a billionaire in his prime, admired by the world, and utterly alone. The mansion was grand, but each corridor echoed with his solitude. Each room felt like a museum, beautiful, polished, lifeless. It was in moments like this that he wondered if he was cursed. Was he destined to have wealth but never love? To be admired but never truly seen? His phone buzzed on the side table. A notification. Another message from an eager woman he had met at a recent dinner. He didn't bother opening it. With a sigh, he silenced the phone and set it aside. Instead, he rose and walked to the tall glass doors that opened onto the terrace. Pushing them apart, he stepped outside. The evening air was cool, brushing against his face. Below, the garden stretched out in symmetrical rows, lanterns glowing softly among hedges and fountains. To his left, the infinity pool shimmered under the pale moonlight. All of it was beautiful. All of it was empty. Benjamin's hands tightened around the balcony railing. His jaw clenched. Something's missing, he whispered into the night. No, someone. He didn't know yet that fate was already moving quietly within the walls of his mansion. That beyond the silence, footsteps belonging to someone new echoed faintly through the halls. That before long his heart, so carefully guarded and painfully empty, was about to be set ablaze. The late afternoon sun slanted through the mansion's tall windows, washing the grand foyer in liquid gold. The marble floors glistened, polished until they reflected every streak of light. Shadows stretched long against the ivory walls, broken only by the graceful sweep of the staircase that curved upward with its wrought iron balustrade and soft cream carpet runner. At the foot of the staircase, a young woman moved quietly, her hands steady as she dusted the railing with a soft cloth. Jennifer Lewis. She was 20, her skin a smooth dark chocolate shade that glowed against the pale tones of the house. Her hair was pulled neatly into a bun, a few loose strands brushing her cheek. The black and white maid uniform fit modestly on her slender frame, crisp and clean, with the apron tied perfectly at the back. Benjamin Alexander had just returned from a meeting downtown. He loosened his tie as he stepped into the foyer, expecting the same emptiness that always greeted him. But this time, it was different. He stopped mid-step. There she was, standing on the marble landing, bathed in soft light from the high windows, as if the house itself had been waiting to reveal her to him. For a long moment, Benjamin could only stare. The sound of her cloth gliding along the railing was the only noise in the vast silence. His chest tightened, his pulse quickened. A strange, unfamiliar rush filled him, something he had never felt with the countless women who had thrown themselves at his wealth and charm. Jennifer, sensing eyes upon her, looked up. Her gaze met his. The world seemed to still. Her dark eyes widened in surprise at seeing him there, but her expression held no arrogance, no flirtation, just respect, humility, and a quiet strength. Benjamin cleared his throat, trying to mask the sudden hitch in his breathing. "What's your name?" His voice, usually smooth and commanding, came out softer than he intended. Jennifer quickly lowered her gaze, clutching the cloth in her hand. "Jennifer, sir. Jennifer Lewis." Her voice, gentle, melodic, wrapped around him like a balm. Benjamin nodded, though he hardly trusted himself to speak again. He wanted to say more, to ask where she came from, why she looked at him as if he were simply a man and not the billionaire the world admired. But he stopped himself. Instead, he turned away, loosening his tie further as he walked toward the corridor leading to his study. Yet his thoughts remained behind, circling around the young maid whose presence had suddenly filled the mansion with something it had always lacked: life. For the rest of the evening, even as he sat in his study surrounded by books and firelight, Benjamin could see only her face. The way her eyes had caught the sunlight, the sound of her voice, the graceful curve of her figure as she worked in silence. That night, when he lay in bed, staring at the ivory ceiling above him, he knew one thing with startling clarity: Jennifer Lewis would never leave his thoughts again. His heart, untouched for so long, had just taken its first fragile leap. Benjamin Alexander sat alone in his oak-paneled study, the quiet hum of the chandelier above filling the silence. The mansion was vast, echoing with emptiness now that most of the staff had gone home for the weekend. For a man who owned half the skyline, he had never felt smaller within his own home. He loosened his tie completely and leaned back in his leather chair, the soft glow of the table lamp highlighting the sharp lines of his face. His desk was littered with unopened business documents, contracts worth millions, but he couldn't read a word. His mind was far away, back in the foyer, on the sight of the young maid who had unknowingly stolen his attention. Jennifer Lewis. The name echoed like a song in his chest. He replayed that moment again and again, her delicate hands dusting the staircase, her shy eyes lifting to meet his, the soft light that seemed to crown her face with an innocent glow. For years, women had thrown themselves at him, chasing his wealth, his status, his power. But none had moved his heart. He had dismissed them all with cold detachment. Yet one glance at her, and something inside him shifted, something he could neither explain nor resist. Benjamin rose from his chair and walked toward the tall window overlooking the city. Lagos glittered outside like a galaxy of lights, yet he felt no connection to it. All the riches in the world suddenly seemed hollow compared to the thought of Jennifer quietly moving through the mansion halls, unaware of the storm she had awakened in him. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but even the burn of the liquor couldn't steady the racing of his heart. He leaned against the window, his reflection staring back at him, a powerful man trapped by loneliness, yearning for something pure. Closing his eyes, he saw her again. The way her lips parted slightly when she was startled. The innocence in her gaze. The softness of her dark skin under the golden light. His chest tightened as a dangerous thought crossed his mind. Could she be the one? Hours passed, but sleep would not come. Benjamin tossed restlessly in his king-sized bed, the sheets cool and empty beside him. The silence of the mansion only magnified his yearning. He longed to see her again, to hear her voice, to call her name. When dawn finally broke, its light spilled gently across his bedroom floor, and Benjamin knew one thing with absolute certainty: Jennifer Lewis had become the center of his world. From that day forward, she would no longer be just a maid in his mansion. She was the woman who had awakened his untouched heart. The mansion was unusually quiet that Saturday morning. Most of the maids had gone to their families for the weekend, leaving the vast house feeling even more like a hollow palace. Only Jennifer remained, dutifully carrying out her work with the same dedication she had shown since the day she arrived. She rose early, tying her hair into a neat bun and slipping into her black and white uniform, her apron crisply fastened at the back. The kitchen smelled of warm bread and sizzling eggs as she prepared breakfast. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting her in soft golden tones. She hummed a faint tune, her movements graceful as she stirred the pot, unaware that she was no longer alone. Benjamin Alexander stood silently in the doorway, watching her. Dressed in a flowing white robe tied loosely around his waist, his presence filled the space with quiet intensity. His dark eyes lingered on her every move, the way her delicate hands moved with care, the way the morning light touched her skin as though it had chosen her as its muse. For the first time in years he felt vulnerable. This was not a business deal to negotiate, not a fleeting attraction he could dismiss. This was something deeper, rawer, a need that consumed him. He stepped closer, his bare feet silent against the polished marble floor. Jennifer did not notice him at first. She was lost in her task, the soft clinking of pans masking his approach. But then she felt it, the sudden awareness of someone behind her. Before she could turn, his strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her gently but firmly against him. She gasped, her body stiffening in surprise, the wooden spoon slipping from her fingers onto the counter. "Mr. Alexander," she began, her voice trembling, but the words caught in her throat as he lowered his head to her ear. "Benjamin," he whispered, his voice husky with emotion. "Call me Benjamin." Her heart pounded as she turned in his embrace, her eyes wide and uncertain. But when she looked up into his gaze, she saw not the cold billionaire she had feared to approach, but a man undone by loneliness, burning with unspoken desire. And before she could say another word, his lips claimed hers. It was not a hesitant kiss. It was deep, urgent, filled with all the longing he had buried for years. Jennifer's hands trembled as they pressed against his chest, but then slowly, almost helplessly, they clung to him. When he pulled back, his voice was fierce yet tender. "I love you, Jennifer. From the moment I saw you, my heart has been yours. You're no maid to me, you're the woman I've been waiting for." Her eyes glistened, unsure if she was dreaming. But Benjamin's conviction left no room for doubt. In one swift motion, he lifted her into his arms as though she weighed nothing. Jennifer gasped softly, clutching his shoulders as he carried her through the wide corridors, past tall windows glowing with morning light. The marble floor gleamed beneath them, echoing with his determined footsteps. He pushed open the door to his bedroom, a sanctuary of modest luxury with cream walls, walnut floors, and silk sheets draped over a wide bed. Carefully he laid her down, his eyes never leaving hers. "From today," he said with unshakable resolve, "you will be mine. My wife. No uniform, no servitude. I will never let you go." And with that promise, he kissed her again, sealing the vow with passion and devotion. The house that had once been silent was now filled with a heartbeat louder than any echo, the heartbeat of a billionaire who had finally found love. The following morning, Benjamin Alexander rose earlier than usual. The mansion, still and serene, seemed to hum with a new energy. He had made a vow to Jennifer the day before, and he was a man who always kept his word. When Jennifer entered the dining room to serve breakfast, she was no longer dressed in her maid's uniform. Instead, she wore a simple floral dress he had insisted she put on from one of the wardrobes. Her cheeks carried the faintest blush, her eyes lowered in modesty as she placed a plate before him. Benjamin reached out, taking her hand gently before she could retreat. "You won't be serving me anymore, Jennifer," he said softly, his deep voice carrying a finality that made her look up. "From now on you will walk beside me. Today I will show you the world as my woman." Jennifer's heart raced. She had dreamed of belonging, of being seen, not as a maid but as herself. And now, this man, powerful beyond imagination, was lifting her into a life she never dared to picture. By mid-morning, his luxury black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up before one of Lagos' most prestigious fashion districts. The boutique's glass exterior glittered like a jewel, reflecting the city's skyline. Inside, chandeliers sparkled over glossy marble floors, while racks of designer gowns, shoes, and accessories filled the air with an intoxicating mix of wealth and exclusivity. As soon as Benjamin entered, hand in hand with Jennifer, all eyes turned. Shoppers whispered, store attendants straightened, and even a few socialites lounging by the displays narrowed their eyes in curiosity. It was no secret who Benjamin Alexander was. But who was this young woman at his side, dressed so simply, holding his hand with shy innocence? "Good morning, sir," the boutique manager stammered, rushing forward with a bow. "We're honored to have you with us today." Benjamin ignored the gawking, his gaze fixed only on Jennifer. He led her gently toward the rows of gowns, lifting a silk dress with his own hands and holding it against her frame. "You'll look divine in this," he murmured. "Try it." Jennifer hesitated, her fingers brushing the fabric, her heart pounding as she noticed the whispers around them. She could feel the heat of jealousy, the judgment in the eyes of women who had once vied for Benjamin's attention. But he seemed utterly blind to them. For him there was only Jennifer. Soon the boutique attendants brought out gown after gown, emerald silk, crimson satin, shimmering gold. Each time Jennifer stepped out from the fitting room, Benjamin's eyes softened, his lips curving into a smile no one else had ever seen. Finally, she emerged in a flowing ivory dress that hugged her form with elegant simplicity. The boutique fell silent. Even the women watching could not hide their envy as Benjamin rose to his feet, his expression overcome with pride. "That," he said firmly, striding to her side, "is the woman I will marry." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, unashamed, while the room buzzed with murmurs of disbelief. Outsiders looked on with jealousy, but Jennifer only lowered her gaze, overwhelmed with both fear and joy. By the time they left, several designer bags trailed behind them, carried by attendants. Jennifer, now adorned in one of the new dresses, sat beside Benjamin in the Rolls-Royce. Her hands trembled as she looked at him. "You don't have to do all this for me," she whispered. Benjamin turned, his dark eyes locking on hers. "Jennifer, I would give you the world if it meant keeping you by my side. You are no longer my maid. You are my future." And with those words, he reached for her hand again, sealing the truth that no whispers of jealousy could ever break. The days following their luxury boutique trip were blissful for Benjamin and Jennifer. She was no longer dressed in the maid's uniform. Instead, her wardrobe sparkled with elegant gowns, casual designer pieces, and soft silks he handpicked for her. But as their love blossomed inside the mansion, outside forces began to stir with envy. The morning sunlight streamed across the polished dining table as Jennifer set 2 plates of food. She wasn't a maid anymore, but she still insisted on serving him, sometimes out of love. Benjamin, in his crisp suit, watched her every move with admiration. "Jennifer, you're not my maid anymore. You're my heart," he whispered, brushing her cheek. Jennifer smiled shyly, but her heart was full of warmth. Unbeknownst to them, one of the staff who disliked her lingered near the door, watching with a jealous scowl. Later that day, the jealous maid whispered in the servants' quarters. "She was scrubbing floors last week. Now she's wearing designer gowns and sleeping in the master's room. How long will this last?" The others exchanged glances. Some were shocked, others jealous, and a few secretly admired Jennifer's sudden rise. The whispers spread beyond the mansion, reaching socialites and friends who long desired Benjamin for themselves. At a luxury lounge in Lagos, the 2 glamorous women who had seen Benjamin and Jennifer at the boutique gathered with others. Their diamond jewelry sparkled under dim lights as they sipped champagne. "That girl is nothing but a maid," one sneered. "And Benjamin Alexander parades her around like a queen?" The other laughed bitterly. "She won't last. Men like him don't marry women like her." They clinked glasses, already scheming to humiliate Jennifer and reclaim Benjamin's attention. Jennifer stood on the balcony in a soft silk dress Benjamin bought for her. She looked out at the city lights, her hand resting gently on her stomach, unaware of the life quietly growing inside her. Benjamin walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You belong here, Jennifer. Don't ever doubt that." Jennifer leaned into him, but deep down she felt the sting of the whispers she had overheard earlier that day. The mansion staff treated her differently now, some with respect, others with thinly veiled contempt. At dinner one evening, one of the older maids intentionally made a comment while pouring wine. "It's strange how quickly some people forget where they come from." Jennifer froze, her face burning. Benjamin's jaw clenched. He slammed his hand lightly on the table. "Enough. Jennifer is not your equal. She is your madam, and soon she will be my wife. If anyone disrespects her again, they answer to me." The room went silent. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, not of shame but of gratitude. For the first time, she realized Benjamin would fight the world for her. Later that night, as they lay together in Benjamin's luxurious bedroom, Jennifer whispered, "Why do they hate me, Benjamin? I never asked for any of this. I was only here to work." He stroked her cheek and pulled her close. "They're blind, Jennifer. They don't see what I see. You're not just a maid, you're the woman I love. And I don't care what they say." Jennifer pressed her ear against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. But even in his arms, she couldn't silence the fear that jealousy and gossip might one day tear them apart. Rumors about Benjamin's sudden love for a former maid spread like wildfire through Lagos elite circles. Invitations arrived for a luxury gala hosted by one of the jealous socialites, Vanessa, who had long desired Benjamin for herself. Jennifer, shy and uncertain, wasn't used to such gatherings. But Benjamin wanted the world to see her by his side. "You are mine, Jennifer. And the world will respect that," he told her firmly as he held her hands. The evening of the gala, Jennifer stood nervously before the mirror in their bedroom. She wore a flowing midnight blue gown Benjamin had chosen, its fabric shimmering softly in the light. Her hair, usually tied in a bun, was styled down in soft curls. Benjamin, in a sharp black tuxedo, walked up behind her, resting his hands gently on her shoulders. "They will see what I see, my queen," he whispered, kissing her neck. Jennifer blushed but still feared the cruel eyes of outsiders. The black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up before a grand hotel, its glass facade sparkling under floodlights. Paparazzi cameras flashed furiously as Benjamin stepped out, tall and confident. When Jennifer emerged, whispers rippled through the crowd. "Isn't that the maid?" someone hissed. "She looks so out of place," another sneered. But Benjamin placed his hand firmly at her waist, guiding her with pride. His gesture silenced some and fueled envy in others. Inside the ballroom, glittering with chandeliers and filled with the wealthy elite, Vanessa, the host, approached with a poisonous smile. "Benjamin," she purred, ignoring Jennifer. "How wonderful to see you. And this must be your guest?" Jennifer's cheeks burned, but before she could falter, Benjamin spoke with calm authority. "This is Jennifer Lewis. She is not my guest, she is my future wife." Gasps filled the air. Vanessa's smile faltered, but her eyes darkened with determination. Later in the evening, Vanessa's plan unfolded. During dinner, she casually remarked to the table, "It's remarkable how quickly some people can trade scrubbing floors for silk gowns." Laughter erupted from a few at the table. Jennifer's fork trembled in her hand and tears stung her eyes. But before she could excuse herself, Benjamin stood, his voice cutting through the hall. "Enough. If anyone here thinks they can insult Jennifer, they insult me. She is not beneath any of you, she is far above your cruelty." The room fell silent. Vanessa clenched her jaw, defeated for the moment. To reclaim the night, Benjamin led Jennifer onto the ballroom floor. As the orchestra played a soft waltz, all eyes turned to them. Jennifer felt her nerves fading as Benjamin held her close, his hand steady on her back. "Ignore them," he whispered. "Just feel me here with you." Under the golden chandeliers, they moved gracefully, their love radiating stronger than the hatred around them. The crowd watched in silence, some envious, some awestruck. Back in the car later that night, Jennifer leaned against Benjamin's shoulder, her heart still shaken. "I don't belong in their world," she whispered. Benjamin kissed her forehead. "You belong with me. And that is enough." Jennifer closed her eyes, comforted by his words, but she knew the fight against jealousy and scorn was only beginning. The days after the gala carried a strange calmness. The humiliation attempt at the ballroom had made its rounds in the social circles of Lagos. Gossip columns had twisted the story, some claiming Jennifer had embarrassed herself, others insisting that Benjamin's fiery defense had cemented their bond. But inside the Alexander mansion, life moved at a slower, more intimate pace. Jennifer awoke before dawn, her body trembling with a wave of nausea. She barely made it to the bathroom before retching into the sink. Her soft hands clutched the marble counter as she leaned forward, the midnight blue silk robe Benjamin had gifted her slipping off one shoulder. When she looked at her reflection, the young girl she had been just months ago seemed like a shadow. Now she carried the eyes of a woman who had tasted both love and fear. She splashed cold water on her face and whispered, "What's happening to me?" Later that morning, Benjamin entered the dining hall in a crisp navy suit, expecting to find Jennifer waiting with her warm smile. Instead, she sat pale and quiet, her spoon untouched in the steaming bowl of pepper soup before her. "Jennifer," he said, his deep voice carrying concern, "you look faint. Are you unwell?" She tried to wave it off, murmuring, "It's nothing. Just the weather." But Benjamin was not fooled. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his warm palm. His eyes searched hers, silently demanding the truth. Across town, Vanessa, the socialite who had tried to humiliate Jennifer, flung her wine glass against her apartment wall. The shards glittered on the floor as her chest heaved. How dare he defend her in front of everyone? She spat. Her friend, a tall man with calculating eyes, leaned against the wall with a smirk. "Patience, Vanessa. The higher she rises, the harder she will fall. All it takes is one mistake." Vanessa's lips curved into a dangerous smile. "And he'll be waiting." Back in the mansion, Jennifer helped the chef cut vegetables for dinner. But midway through, a sudden wave of dizziness overcame her. The knife slipped from her hand, clattering against the cutting board. "Madam, are you all right?" the chef asked, startled. Jennifer pressed a hand to her stomach. A strange warmth spread inside her, terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She excused herself quickly, whispering, "I just need some air." She stepped into the garden, inhaling the cool evening breeze. The flowers seemed brighter, the world sharper. Yet her heart thundered in confusion. That night, Benjamin found Jennifer sitting on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Her midnight blue robe fluttered around her frame. "Jennifer," he said softly, kneeling beside her chair. "I've seen the signs. The sickness in the morning, the faintness, the way you've been holding your stomach. Are you carrying my child?" Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. She opened her lips, but no words came out. Instead, she clutched his hand tightly, pressing it to her stomach. Benjamin's heart pounded. He pulled her into his arms, whispering fiercely, "This is not a burden, it's a blessing. Our blessing." While love deepened inside the mansion, the world outside plotted storms. Vanessa's words spread like wildfire through social circles. Rumors that Jennifer was pregnant. Some mocked, others whispered about inheritance and greed. But Benjamin Alexander was not a man to bend to whispers. As he held Jennifer that night, her head resting against his chest, he vowed silently, "No one will take you from me. Not now. Not ever." The next morning, Jennifer tried to act normal as she sat across from Benjamin in the dining hall. She wore one of the soft designer dresses he had recently bought her, a pale lavender gown that flowed delicately around her frame. But her hand unconsciously rubbed her stomach, her thoughts elsewhere. Benjamin noticed. "Jennifer," he said, his deep voice steady, "the world may talk, but we will not hide. Do you understand? You are my pride, not my secret." Jennifer nodded, but inside her chest, doubt clawed at her. Later that day, Benjamin's assistant, Chike, entered his office carrying a tablet. His face was tense. "Sir, you need to see this." On the screen were headlines splashed across society blogs. From maid to mother? Billionaire Benjamin Alexander's shocking romance. Pregnancy rumors rock Lagos elite. Jennifer's photo was plastered beneath cruel captions. The gossip was no longer whispers. It was a storm. Benjamin's jaw tightened. He slammed the tablet down. "They will not humiliate her. Not while I breathe." Across the city, Vanessa sat with a group of wealthy women in a private club. She wore a sleek red dress, her smile sharp as she whispered into their eager ears. "Think about it," she said sweetly. "That girl is nothing more than a maid who trapped him with a pregnancy. Do you think she's worthy of becoming the wife of Benjamin Alexander? Worthy of carrying his heir?" Laughter echoed around the table. The poison spread deeper. That evening, Jennifer sat alone in the garden, the night air cool against her skin. The flowers around her swayed gently in the breeze, but she could not hear their whispers over the cruel voices in her head. She remembered the way people stared at the gala, the way Vanessa's laughter cut through her soul. She touched her stomach, whispering, "Am I strong enough for this? For him?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, falling onto her lap. Benjamin found her there, sitting under the soft glow of the garden lamps. He crouched before her, taking her face gently in his hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You are strong enough," he whispered fiercely. "You are stronger than they will ever know. Jennifer, I built empires, but none of it means anything without you. They can whisper all they want. You are mine and I will fight the world for you." Jennifer sobbed softly, but this time, it was not from despair. It was from the fierce love that wrapped around her like armor. The following day, Benjamin decided to silence the whispers. He arrived with Jennifer at one of Lagos' finest restaurants, hand in hand. Cameras flashed wildly as they stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. Jennifer wore an elegant cream-colored maternity-inspired dress that hugged her frame gently, her natural beauty glowing. Benjamin, in a perfectly tailored black suit, kept his arm around her waist, guiding her proudly inside. When the press swarmed, asking about the rumors, Benjamin stopped. His voice rang out clear. "Yes, Jennifer is carrying my child. Yes, she will be my wife. And anyone who has a problem with that can stay out of my life." Gasps erupted. Jennifer clung to his arm, trembling but proud. In that moment, she was no longer a maid. She was the woman Benjamin Alexander would fight for in front of the world. Jennifer woke up in Benjamin's arms, her cheek pressed against his chest. The early morning light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling curtains of their bedroom. For the first time in weeks, she felt a fragile peace. She touched her stomach softly, whispering to the child she carried. But peace rarely lasted in Benjamin's world. Later that morning, Benjamin's butler delivered a cream-colored envelope with no signature. Inside was a neatly typed letter. "A maid will always be a maid. She will ruin you, Benjamin. Look closer, you cannot trust her. She's hiding things." Benjamin crushed the paper in his fist, his jaw tightening. He knew exactly where the poison came from. Vanessa was no longer content with whispers. She wanted Jennifer gone. At her penthouse, Vanessa met with the same calculating man who had encouraged her. On the table lay photos. Jennifer leaving the mansion, Jennifer with the chef, Jennifer walking through the market. each one twisted to look suspicious. She's weak, Vanessa said with venom. We just need to push Benjamin into doubting her. Once he does, she'll crumble. The man smirked. And once she's gone, you'll finally have him. That afternoon, Jennifer decided to take a walk in the mansion garden to clear her mind. But as she returned to the hallway, two of the house staff, maids loyal to Vanessa's whispers, whispered loudly enough for her to hear. She trapped him with a pregnancy. She doesn't deserve to be here. Jennifer froze, her heart pounding. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, but her voice faltered. The sting of their words cut deep. Benjamin returned home earlier than expected that evening. As he entered the lounge, Vanessa was already there, uninvited, dressed in a sleek emerald gown, pretending concern. Benjamin, she said softly, I came as a friend. You should know. People are talking. They say Jennifer is only using you. They say she's been meeting men behind your back. She slid the photos across the glass coffee table, her eyes shining with false pity. Benjamin glanced at the photos, his silence heavy. At that exact moment, Jennifer entered the lounge in a flowing cream gown, her dark skin glowing in the soft light. She froze when she saw Vanessa sitting so close to Benjamin, the photos between them. Benjamin, she whispered, her voice shaking. Vanessa smirked. Ask her. Ask her where she was yesterday. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Not because she was guilty, but because she realized how cruel people could be to tear them apart. The room held its breath. Benjamin stood slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow over Vanessa. He picked up the photos, ripped them into pieces, and let them fall to the floor. Jennifer is my fiancée, he said firmly. My future wife. The mother of my child. I trust her more than anyone in this world. He turned to Vanessa, his voice steel. And you are never to set foot in my home again. Vanessa's face burned with rage, but she masked it with a brittle smile before storming out. As the door slammed shut, Jennifer collapsed into tears. Benjamin. They'll never stop. They'll always try to ruin us. Benjamin pulled her into his arms, lifting her chin so she could see his eyes. Let them try. They will only fail. Jennifer, nothing, not rumors, not jealousy, not lies, will ever take me from you. He kissed her deeply, sealing his vow. For Jennifer, the world was still dangerous, but in Benjamin's arms she found her shield. The storm that had been brewing finally broke. Vanessa had been publicly humiliated and cast aside, but her obsession with Benjamin Alexander wasn't something she could easily swallow. Jennifer was beginning to feel more at home in the mansion. Her belly had started to show slightly, and Benjamin had made it his duty to ensure she wanted for nothing. But even with the luxury surrounding her, there was a shadow that never left her heart. She often overheard whispers from the staff, some fueled by jealousy, others by loyalty to Vanessa. She won't last here. Vanessa won't allow it. These whispers clung to her like thorns, pricking her peace. One late afternoon, Jennifer was sitting in the modest luxury living room, reading quietly when the glass doors swung open. Vanessa, in a blood-red gown that shimmered dangerously against her fair skin, stepped inside as though she owned the place. Her eyes were sharp, her smile venomous. Oh, Jennifer. Still pretending, I see? Do you really think a maid can become Mrs. Alexander? Jennifer stood, clutching her stomach protectively. You shouldn't be here. Vanessa's laugh echoed coldly through the room. This house was practically mine before you came along. And you, she stepped closer, lowering her voice, you're nothing but a mistake. Before Jennifer could reply, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Benjamin appeared, his tall frame dressed in a tailored black suit, his face thunderous. Vanessa, he said, his voice low and commanding, you're trespassing. Leave now before I make it permanent. Vanessa's face contorted. Benjamin, you're blind. She's using you. She trapped you with a pregnancy. Benjamin stepped closer, his voice like steel. She's the woman I love. She carries my child, and she is the only future I see. You're nothing but the past. Vanessa's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her pride would never let her show weakness. She hissed, you'll regret this, before storming out, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. After the confrontation, Jennifer collapsed back onto the sofa, shaken. Benjamin rushed to her side, kneeling before her, his hands gently cupping her face. Look at me, he whispered. No one will hurt you. No one will take you from me. Her lips trembled. But what if she doesn't stop? What if she? Jennifer's hand instinctively rested on her stomach. Benjamin pressed his forehead against hers. Then she will face me. And I swear on everything I own, no harm will ever come to you or our child. 2 nights later, under the cover of darkness, Vanessa made her move. Disguised in a black cloak, she bribed one of the disloyal staff to open the gates. Her plan wasn't love anymore, it was destruction. She crept toward Jennifer's private quarters, a sharp object glinting in her hand. Her eyes burned with madness, her heart consumed with rage. But Benjamin had anticipated her. He had tightened security, stationed loyal guards, and placed cameras in hidden corners. As Vanessa reached for the door handle, bright lights suddenly flooded the hallway. Guards surrounded her, and Benjamin himself stepped out of the shadows, his face grim, his voice deadly calm. "This ends tonight, Vanessa." Vanessa screamed, lunging forward in a last desperate attempt, but she was easily restrained. Her weapon clattered to the floor. Tears streamed down her face as she thrashed. "He was supposed to be mine. You were supposed to be mine." Benjamin didn't flinch. "You lost me long ago. What you've done tonight is unforgivable." With a wave of his hand, the guards escorted her out. Her cries echoed into the night, fading like the end of a nightmare. Jennifer had been awake, terrified, watching from the bedroom door. When the danger passed, Benjamin strode to her, pulling her into his arms. She wept silently against his chest, her fears finally breaking loose. Benjamin kissed her forehead. "It's over. You're safe now. Nothing will come between us again." Jennifer lifted her gaze to him, her dark eyes shimmering with love and relief. "As long as I have you, I'll never be afraid." Benjamin held her tighter, his heart swelling. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone, and nothing, not even jealousy or hatred, could take this away from him. The chaos Vanessa brought into their lives faded like a bad dream. After her final attempt ended in disgrace, Benjamin tightened his circle, dismissing every disloyal staff member and surrounding Jennifer with loyal caretakers who adored her. The mansion, once echoing with whispers, now glowed with peace. Jennifer's pregnancy blossomed, her beauty radiant with every passing day. Benjamin, who had once lived in silence and solitude, found himself laughing more, smiling often, and dreaming for the first time in years. Each evening, he would rest his hand gently on her growing belly, speaking softly to the life inside. Society, as expected, raised its eyebrows. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire chooses Maid as wife." The elite whispered, doubted, mocked. But Benjamin stood firm, his powerful voice silencing critics at every turn. He didn't just love Jennifer privately. He announced it proudly, declaring her as his soon-to-be wife at a grand gala, her cream silk gown shimmering under the lights as he kissed her hand before the cameras. Jennifer, though nervous at first, discovered strength in his unwavering love. She no longer felt like just a maid. She was his partner, his equal, his heart. And with every touch, every whispered promise, Benjamin reminded her of that. When their child was born months later, a beautiful baby boy with Benjamin's strong features and Jennifer's warm smile, the mansion that once felt like a cage for the billionaire became a home filled with laughter, love, and the soft cries of new life. Benjamin held Jennifer close in the nursery one quiet night, their son asleep between them. He kissed her forehead, his deep voice carrying the promise of eternity. "I once lived in shadows, Jennifer. Empty halls, empty nights, empty heart. But you came into my world like light. You gave me love, family, and a reason to live. I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'll never let go." Jennifer smiled, her eyes glistening with happy tears. "And I'll spend the rest of mine reminding you that you were never truly alone. You just needed someone to see the man behind the billionaire." Together they looked at their son, their fingers intertwined. No jealousy, no sabotage, no whispers could shake what they had built. Their story was no longer about a billionaire and a maid, it was about two souls who found each other against all odds. From loneliness to love, from shadows to forever, Benjamin Alexander and Jennifer Lewis had written their own happily ever after. If you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe for more of the story. See you again in the next story. Thank you for watching. The penthouse was alive with silence. It was the kind of silence that spoke of wealth, thick carpets muffling footsteps, automatic doors whispering open, and a view of the glittering skyline framed by glass walls that stretched from floor to ceiling. Vincent Jeffrey loosened his tie as he walked across the living room. His shoulders ached from the endless boardroom meetings, his mind clouded with numbers and deals. The faint hum of the city below reached him, but it couldn't cut through the exhaustion pressing down on him. All he wanted was a shower, a moment of release. He shrugged off his suit jacket, unbuttoned his shirt, and draped it neatly over the black leather chair near his bed. Then, with practiced motions, he undressed and wrapped a towel loosely around his waist. Without thinking, he headed for the bathroom. The moment he opened the frosted glass door, his steps halted. Sophia Donald was inside. She was kneeling on the marble floor, her head bent, one hand scrubbing the corner of the freestanding bathtub. Her hair, usually tied back tightly, had come loose, a few strands falling over her face. The dim golden glow of the chandelier above cast a warm halo around her, softening her simple features and making her look almost ethereal. Vincent froze. He hadn't expected anyone. And then she turned. Her brown eyes widened, her lips parting as though she'd seen a ghost. The cleaning sponge slipped from her trembling hand and landed with a soft splash in the soapy water. "Sir," she stammered, scrambling to her feet, her heart hammering. She pressed her back against the cool marble wall, as though it might swallow her up and hide her. Vincent's jaw tightened. He should have excused himself, should have left immediately, but his eyes betrayed him. He was caught, utterly captured by the way her fear mixed with innocence. She wasn't just his maid, there was something deeper there, something raw that tugged at him in a way no woman ever had. His chest rose and fell. She clutched her rag against her chest like a shield. I'm sorry, Mr. Jeffrey. I didn't know you were Sophia." His voice was deeper than he intended, gravelly with exhaustion and something else. Her name lingered in the air. Sophia swallowed hard. Her knees felt weak. She had worked in this mansion for 6 months, always careful to stay invisible, to never attract attention. But now his gaze was burning into her, melting away the walls she'd built around herself. Vincent took a step forward. She flinched, pressing harder into the wall. "Please, sir. I should go." But he couldn't stop himself. The sight of her trembling lips, her wide eyes, the way her chest rose and fell, it broke something inside him. Without thinking, his hand rose to cup her cheek. Her skin was soft, warmer than he imagined. "Don't be afraid," he murmured, his voice almost a whisper. Her breath caught, and then his lips were on hers. It was a tentative kiss at first, hesitant, as though giving her a chance to pull away. But when she didn't, when her body froze instead of fleeing, something fierce awakened in him. He pressed harder, deepening the kiss, tasting her innocence, needing more. Sophia's eyes fluttered shut, her mind spinning. For a heartbeat, she almost gave in to the heat surging through her veins. But then reality struck. He was her employer, a man of unimaginable power and wealth, and she was just a maid. With a strangled gasp, she shoved against his chest and tore herself free. I can't," she cried, her voice trembling as much as her body. Before Vincent could speak, she darted past him, fleeing the bathroom. The sound of her hurried footsteps echoed through the marble halls, fading until the silence swallowed them again. Vincent stood there, his towel threatening to slip, his breathing ragged. He pressed a hand to his lips, still tasting her there. For the first time in years, Vincent Jeffrey, the man who had conquered empires, signed billion-dollar deals, and commanded every room he entered, felt powerless. And all because of his maid. The morning sun spilled through the penthouse windows, drenching the living room in golden light. The glass walls framed a breathtaking view of the skyline, the skyscrapers glistening like blades of silver against the pale sky. Sophia Donald moved quietly through the kitchen, her hands trembling as she arranged Vincent Jeffrey's breakfast on a polished silver tray. A pot of steaming coffee, freshly squeezed orange juice in a crystal glass, and warm croissants rested on fine porcelain plates. She tried to steady her breathing, but her heart had not stopped racing since last night's encounter in the bathroom. She had run from him then, but she hadn't escaped the memory of his kiss. As she balanced the tray carefully, the butler's voice startled her. "Mr. Jeffrey has requested his breakfast in his bedroom this morning." Her stomach tightened. He never took breakfast in his room. Always, he sat at the long dining table beneath the sparkling chandelier, reading the morning paper. Why today? Her hands tightened on the tray. She nodded quickly and made her way up the marble staircase, her black maid's uniform brushing against her legs with every step. When she entered his bedroom, she froze for the second time in 2 days. The room was vast, bathed in soft daylight that filtered through floor-to-ceiling curtains of pale ivory. A king-sized bed dressed in snow-white Egyptian cotton sheets dominated the space. Golden accents gleamed on the bedside tables, while a grand crystal chandelier hung overhead, scattering light like stars. And there he was. Vincent Jeffrey sat on the edge of the bed, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his sleeves rolled back to reveal strong forearms. He wasn't looking at the skyline or the breakfast or anything else. His eyes were fixed entirely on her. Sophia's throat went dry. She lowered her gaze and crossed the room, setting the tray gently on a glass table near the window. "Your breakfast, sir," she said softly, her voice barely steady. She turned quickly, eager to escape, but his voice stopped her. Sophia. Her steps faltered. Slowly she turned. His eyes were different today, not cold and calculating but vulnerable, almost pleading. I can't keep pretending, Vincent said, rising to his feet. His tall frame seemed to fill the room, his presence pulling her into his orbit. Last night. What happened? It wasn't a mistake. Her heart thudded painfully. Mr. Jeffrey, please. Vincent, he corrected gently, taking a step closer. Not Mr. Jeffrey. Not with you. She shook her head, clutching her apron. This is wrong. You're my employer. I shouldn't even. I don't care about rules. I don't care that you're my maid. Sophia, I've built empires, signed deals worth billions, and I've never lost control. Until you. His voice cracked with intensity. You've undone me, Sophia. And I can't let you go. Her breath caught in her chest. She should have run. She should have protested. But his words melted the last of her defenses, and when he closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands, she didn't resist. He kissed her, deeply, hungrily, as though claiming what he believed was his. Sophia trembled, her knees weak, her hands pressing against his chest, not to push him away but to steady herself as she drowned in him. Vincent. She whispered against his lips, her resolve breaking. Don't fight me, he murmured, his breath hot against her ear. Don't fight what we both feel. The kiss deepened, igniting a fire that neither of them could extinguish. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close until there was no space left between them. They stumbled back, collapsing onto the silk-sheeted bed. The skyline glittered beyond the glass walls, a silent witness to their surrender. For the first time, Sophia let herself be swept away, not as his maid, not as a servant, but as a woman wanted by a man who couldn't control his heart. The days after that morning blurred together for Sophia Donald. She moved through the mansion like a shadow, her black maid's uniform crisp, her apron tied neatly, her hands busy with dusting, polishing, and arranging. To anyone else she looked the same, quiet, disciplined, invisible. But inside, her heart was in chaos. Every time she passed Vincent Jeffrey in the hall, her body remembered the heat of his touch. His glances lingered longer now, his fingers brushed hers deliberately when he handed her a glass or a document, and once, when no one was watching, he had stolen another kiss in the kitchen, quick and desperate. It was dangerous, and it was intoxicating. Yet, beneath the stolen passion, fear began to take root. One evening, Sophia sat on the edge of her small bed in the staff quarters, the walls plain and bare compared to the luxury above. She stared at her reflection in the tiny oval mirror, her fingers pressed against her stomach. Her monthly cycle had not come. Her breath quickened as she counted the days again. She wasn't wrong. Her hands began to shake. No, it can't be, she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. But her body told the truth. She was pregnant. Sophia covered her mouth to stifle a sob. She couldn't imagine telling Vincent. What would he say? Would he accuse her of trapping him? Would he send her away, strip her of the only job she had? Her heart clenched. The thought of leaving him, never seeing him again, was unbearable. But the reality of their worlds was impossible to ignore. He was a billionaire who commanded boardrooms and empires. She was a maid who polished the floors beneath his feet. What place could a child born from them have in his world? The following morning, Sophia walked into the great dining hall carrying fresh flowers for the table. Vincent was there, standing by the window with a glass of wine even though the sun had barely risen. He turned at the sound of her steps, his sharp features softening the moment his eyes landed on her. Sophia, he said, his voice lower than usual, almost tender. She froze, clutching the vase of lilies tightly. Good morning, sir, she whispered, forcing her gaze down. He crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate. When he reached her, his hand brushed hers as he took the vase from her trembling fingers. I told you, he murmured, it's Vincent. Only Vincent when you speak to me. Her chest tightened, and for a moment she wanted to sink into him, to let him hold her and erase her fears. But her secret weighed too heavily on her heart. She managed a weak smile, bowed her head, and hurried away before he could see the tears welling in her eyes. That night, alone again in her tiny room, Sophia lay curled on her side, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. A life was growing inside her. His life. She whispered into the darkness as though the unborn child could hear her. I don't know what's going to happen. But I'll protect you. Even if it means losing him, I'll protect you. Her tears slid silently into her pillow, as the city lights outside twinkled through the tiny window. For the first time since she met Vincent Jeffrey, Sophia felt more terrified than she ever had in her life. Vincent Jeffrey was not a man easily distracted. He could sit through hours of high-stakes board meetings, negotiate billion-dollar mergers, and dissect contracts without blinking an eye. He was a fortress of discipline. But lately something gnawed at him. It wasn't the market. It wasn't the ruthless competition. It was Sophia Donald. The maid who once carried herself with quiet grace now avoided his gaze. She scurried past him in the hallways, head down, her hands trembling as she placed his coffee on the table. The warmth of her laughter, which had once secretly overheard while she spoke with the other maids, had vanished. Vincent noticed everything. And what he noticed he could not ignore. That evening he sat in the living room of his mansion, surrounded by sleek leather couches and glowing amber lights from the floor lamps. The city skyline glittered beyond the tall glass windows, but he wasn't looking at it. He was waiting. He knew Sophia would come to tidy the space before retiring for the night. He wanted to see her. He wanted answers. When she entered, wearing her black maid's uniform and carrying a tray of folded napkins, his heart tightened. She looked thinner, her dark curls tucked too tightly, her shoulders tense like a frightened bird. "Sophia," he said quietly. She froze. Her voice was soft, barely audible. "Yes, sir?" Vincent rose from the couch and stepped closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. "What's wrong with you?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "You've been different." Her caramel brown skin flushed, her eyes darting away. "Nothing is wrong, sir. I'm fine." He reached out, gently but insistently lifting her chin so her eyes met his. Her lips trembled under the weight of his gaze. "You're lying to me," he whispered. For a moment she thought she would break. The truth ached on her tongue, the confession threatening to spill out. "I'm carrying your child." But fear gripped her. Fear of losing her job, fear of rejection, fear of being tossed aside like she meant nothing. "I'm fine," she repeated, stepping back. Vincent's jaw tightened. He was a man who hated deception, yet something in her eyes told him this wasn't betrayal, it was pain. "Fine," he said at last, though his tone carried a warning. "But know this, Sophia, I don't ignore the people I care about. And I do care about you." Her breath caught, and for a moment her carefully built wall cracked. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly turned away, placing the napkins on the table with trembling hands. She muttered, "Good night, sir," before fleeing the room. Vincent remained standing in the silence, his chest heaving with frustration. He had tasted her lips, felt her softness against him, shared nights of stolen passion. But now she was slipping away, hiding something from him. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, staring into the golden liquid. Whatever secret Sophia was guarding, he would uncover it. He always got to the truth. The weeks slipped by like sand through an hourglass. For Sophia, each sunrise carried a new layer of anxiety. Her once loose maid's uniform was starting to tighten ever so slightly around her waist. The changes were small, almost unnoticeable to anyone else, but she felt them. Every button that pressed against her skin, every faint tug of fabric across her stomach. She doubled her efforts to hide it. She wore her apron tighter, adjusted her uniform constantly, and always carried trays or linens in front of her whenever Vincent passed by. She moved with her head bowed lower than ever, afraid that one glance from his sharp eyes would unravel her secret. But Vincent Jeffrey wasn't a man who overlooked details. One evening Vincent entered the kitchen, something he rarely did. The chefs and staff scattered quickly, their workstations left mid-prep, for no one wanted to linger when the master of the house walked in. Sophia was at the counter, carefully slicing vegetables for the evening meal. She stiffened when she sensed him behind her. "Sophia," his deep voice rumbled, rich but controlled. She turned quickly, her caramel brown skin flushed, her curls tucked under a plain headscarf. Her eyes darted nervously. "Yes, sir?" His gaze swept over her trembling hands, the nervous way she held the knife, the apron tied unusually high around her waist. For a fleeting moment, his eyes narrowed as though something clicked in his mind. "You've been avoiding me," he said plainly. Her throat tightened. "No, sir. I've just been busy." "Busy," he echoed, stepping closer. The scent of his cologne, sharp and masculine, filled her senses. His towering figure blocked her escape. "Too busy to look me in the eye? Too busy to tell me the truth?" Sophia's grip faltered on the knife, and she quickly set it down before he noticed how badly her hands shook. "There's nothing to tell." Vincent studied her, his sharp jawline tense, his eyes dark and unreadable. "I don't believe that." Later that night, Sophia returned to her small quarters. She sank onto her bed, clutching her stomach. The secret grew heavier each day, not just in her body but in her heart. She imagined telling him, imagined his reaction. Anger, disbelief, rejection. But then she remembered the way he kissed her, the way his voice softened whenever he said her name. Was it possible he might feel joy instead of betrayal? Tears welled in her eyes. How long can I hide this? She whispered to the silent room. Meanwhile, in his penthouse suite upstairs, Vincent stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the city lights. He replayed every look, every movement of Sophia in recent weeks. The slight pallor in her cheeks. The way she shielded herself with trays and laundry. The way her apron sat differently on her body. Something was changing. And Vincent Jeffrey was a man who always uncovered the truth. Vincent Jeffrey had waited long enough. Days of silence and half-truths ate at him like acid. He wasn't a man accustomed to being shut out. In the boardroom, he demanded transparency. In business, he hunted the truth ruthlessly. And now, in his own home, the woman who had stolen his heart was hiding something from him. He could see it in her eyes. He could see it in the way her uniform fit differently, in the way she shielded herself behind trays and towels, in the way she recoiled whenever he stepped too close. That evening, the storm finally broke. Sophia was in the library, polishing the glass doors of the towering bookcases. The room smelled of leather and oak, golden light spilling from the chandelier above. Her curls were pinned tightly beneath her maid's cap, and her slender figure seemed more fragile than usual. She heard the door shut behind her. When she turned, Vincent was there. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood, his tall frame filling the doorway, his eyes burning into her. His presence made the room feel smaller, the air heavier. "Vincent, sir," she stammered, clutching the cloth in her hand. He crossed the space between them slowly, deliberately, until he stood only inches away. The scent of his cologne wrapped around her, intoxicating and suffocating all at once. "I've given you time, Sophia," he said, his deep voice edged with both steel and tenderness. "But no more. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what you're hiding." Her breath hitched. She took a step back, but he followed, relentless. "There's nothing. Don't lie to me." His tone cut like a blade. "I know when someone is keeping secrets. You've changed. Your body, your eyes, the way you flinch when I touch you. Something is happening to you." Tears welled in her eyes, blurring her vision. She wanted to tell him, oh, how desperately she wanted to, but fear clawed at her chest. What if he rejected her? What if she was cast out into the world with nothing, carrying his child alone? "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't ask me." Vincent's expression softened, though his grip on control remained. He raised a hand and brushed a tear from her cheek, his touch achingly tender. "I can't stand watching you suffer in silence," he murmured. "I love you, Sophia. And I won't let you drown alone in whatever this is. If you trust me with nothing else, trust me with the truth." Her lips parted, trembling with the confession that sat on her tongue. But before she could speak, she broke. The tears spilled freely and she collapsed against his chest, clutching his shirt as sobs shook her. Vincent wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly as though he could protect her from the weight of the world. He kissed the crown of her head, his heart thundering with both fear and love. He didn't know the truth yet. But he knew this, whatever Sophia was hiding, it was big. And he would not let go until he uncovered it. The air in the mansion was heavy with unspoken words. Since that night in the library, Vincent had been watching Sophia more closely, his suspicion turning into certainty. Every gesture, every glance, every time she pressed her hand against her stomach, he saw it all. Sophia, on the other hand, had been walking on the edge of collapse. Her body was changing, her emotions warring inside her. She could no longer hide the truth, yet fear chained her tongue. Fear of rejection, fear of losing him, fear of becoming nothing but a scandal in his world of wealth and power. But the truth has a way of clawing itself to the surface. It was a Sunday morning. The sky outside was washed in pale gray, rain pattering softly against the glass walls of Vincent's penthouse bedroom. He sat on the edge of his massive bed, bare-chested in silk pajama bottoms, his strong frame hunched slightly forward, hands clasped as though he were preparing for battle. When the door opened, Sophia entered, carrying a silver tray with his breakfast. She wore a simple maid's dress, her face pale, eyes downcast. She placed the tray carefully on the bedside table, avoiding his gaze. "Leave it there," Vincent said, his voice low but firm. She turned quickly, desperate to escape, but his voice followed. "Sophia, stop." Her feet froze. Slowly she turned back, her hands twisting nervously in front of her apron. Vincent rose to his full height and stepped closer, his gaze heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. "I can't keep watching you suffer," he said softly but with unshakable strength. "If you love me, don't lie to me. Tell me what's happening." Her lips trembled. Her heart raced. Tears blurred her vision. And finally, like a dam bursting, the words spilled out. I'm pregnant, Vincent. The room fell silent except for the sound of the rain. Vincent's body went rigid, his eyes widening as the words sank into him. You. He stepped closer, searching her tear-streaked face. You're carrying my child? Sophia nodded, choking back sobs. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd throw me out. Hate you? His voice cracked, his control slipping. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Sophia, I love you. Nothing could ever make me hate you. Her tears flowed freely as she collapsed against him, her fragile frame trembling in his arms. He held her tightly, his lips pressing against her hair, his own eyes damp with emotion. Vincent pulled back slightly, his hands still firm on her shoulders, his gaze burning with intensity. Listen to me, he said, every word heavy with sincerity. You will never face this alone. Not now, not ever. This child, our child, is a gift. And you. He placed his palm gently on her stomach, his voice breaking with awe. You're carrying my legacy, Sophia. My heart. Sophia sobbed into his chest, relief flooding through her like sunlight breaking a storm. The weight of secrecy lifted, replaced with the warmth of his love and the strength of his promise. Outside, the rain softened to a gentle drizzle, as though the world itself had been holding its breath for this moment. For the first time in weeks, Sophia felt free. And for the first time in his life, Vincent Jeffrey knew what it meant to truly belong to someone. The mansion felt different now. Every hallway, every room, every glance Vincent gave Sophia carried a new weight. The secret was no longer hidden. It was alive, growing inside her, and Vincent Jeffrey was determined to protect it with everything he had. The morning after Sophia's confession, she woke not in her tiny maid's quarters but in Vincent's sprawling bedroom. The silk sheets wrapped around her felt foreign, the softness too much for someone used to the roughness of plain cotton. She turned her head and found Vincent already awake, seated in a chair near the window, dressed sharply in a tailored navy suit, his expression thoughtful as he sipped his coffee. When their eyes met, he smiled faintly. You belong here, he said as though reading her doubts. Not down there scrubbing floors. Sophia's cheeks warmed. She sat up slowly, her hands instinctively pressing her stomach. Vincent, I'm still your maid. You're not my maid anymore, he interrupted firmly. You're the mother of my child. From now on, you're under my protection. As the day went on, the household staff whispered among themselves. Sophia was no longer wearing her uniform. Instead, Vincent had ordered a stylist to bring her simple but elegant dresses and soft fabrics that flattered her figure without drawing too much attention. The maids and butlers exchanged knowing glances as she walked through the hallways, her head lowered in embarrassment. Yet behind every glance was also a strange respect. She had captured the heart of the man who seemed untouchable. Vincent ignored the whispers. His focus was singular, Sophia. Later that day, Vincent was in his private study, speaking with his lawyer and financial advisor. The room was lined with glass walls that overlooked the city skyline, his presence commanding as he leaned against his desk. I want new contracts drawn, he ordered. Property secured in Sophia's name. I want full medical arrangements for her and the baby, the best doctors, the best care round the clock. His advisor hesitated. Sir, this will raise questions. The press. Vincent's eyes narrowed. Let them question. I don't care. What matters is her safety and my child's future. His voice left no room for argument. Meanwhile, Sophia sat alone in the garden, surrounded by roses in bloom. Her delicate fingers traced the petals as her thoughts swirled. She felt trapped between worlds, no longer a maid, not yet a woman worthy of his world of power and wealth. Could she ever fit into his life? Could she be more than a scandal in the eyes of society? Vincent found her there, her eyes glistening with quiet fear. He crouched before her, taking her trembling hands into his. You're thinking too much, he whispered. I don't care what anyone says. All I care about is you, Sophia. You and our child. Her lips quivered, but when she saw the fire in his eyes, her doubt wavered. That night, as the city lights glittered beyond the glass walls of his penthouse, Vincent held Sophia in his arms. Her head rested against his chest, his hand caressing her small baby bump with reverence. From today onward, he vowed softly, no one will ever hurt you. No one will take you from me. You and this child. You're my future. Sophia's tears dampened his chest, but this time they weren't born of fear. They were born of relief, of hope, of love that was finally steady, no longer fragile. And for the first time, she began to believe in his promise. The peace in Vincent Jeffrey's mansion was fragile, and it didn't last long. 4 days after his vow to Sophia, he had wrapped her in protection. She stayed close to him, dressed no longer in maid's uniforms but in soft designer gowns that his stylist carefully selected. Doctors came and went discreetly. Meals were served to her in the sunlit garden or in his private penthouse suite. But beyond the mansion walls, the world was beginning to stir. It started with a whisper in high society. A young maid suddenly appearing on Vincent Jeffrey's arm. A girl spotted entering luxury boutiques under the watchful gaze of his bodyguards. Paparazzi lenses caught glimpses of her in his penthouse window, her silhouette soft and unmistakably feminine. Then the tabloids printed it. Vincent Jeffrey's secret romance, mystery woman or maid. Photos of Sophia began to circulate. Grainy, stolen shots of her leaving a medical clinic with Vincent by her side. A rumor spreading like wildfire: she was pregnant. One evening, Vincent returned from work to find Sophia sitting stiffly on the couch, her face pale, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Across from her sat an older man in a charcoal suit, Vincent's uncle, Henry Jeffrey, a stern patriarch of the family's empire. Henry's sharp eyes turned on Vincent as he entered. "So it's true," he said coldly. "You've taken in a servant girl and she's carrying your child." Sophia flinched, lowering her gaze. Vincent's jaw clenched. He strode forward, placing a protective hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Her name is Sophia Donald, and she's the woman I love." "Love?" Henry sneered. "Vincent, you are the face of Jeffrey Enterprises. You can't afford scandals. You're expected to marry within your circle. Investors won't tolerate." "Enough." Vincent's voice thundered, his eyes dark with fire. "This is my life, my child, my future. And I'll burn every contract in this city before I give them up." Sophia's heart swelled with fear and awe all at once. Later that night, Sophia stood alone on the balcony, the glittering city stretching endlessly before her. Her hands rested protectively on her small but growing belly, her tears catching the moonlight. What if Henry was right? What if she ruined Vincent's empire just by being with him? She was just a maid, unworthy of his power, his name, his legacy. Vincent stepped out quietly, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. He kissed her shoulder, his voice low against her skin. "Don't listen to him. Don't listen to anyone. You're mine, Sophia. And this child is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me." Her tears fell freely, but for the first time she let herself believe him. The next morning, the paparazzi were waiting outside the gates. Dozens of flashing cameras, shouting voices, the world demanding answers. Vincent stepped out first, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his presence commanding, untouchable. Then, to everyone's shock, he extended his hand, and Sophia emerged beside him, dressed elegantly in a cream gown, her curls framing her glowing face. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The cameras exploded in light. Vincent tightened his hand around hers and looked directly at the reporters. "Yes," he said firmly. "Sophia Donald is the woman I love. And she is carrying my child." The words struck like thunder, sending shockwaves through the city. And in that single moment, Vincent chose love over reputation, Sophia over empire. The world would never be the same again. The morning sun cast a golden haze across the Jeffrey estate, but peace was nowhere to be found. Vincent's declaration had ignited a storm that neither money nor influence could easily silence. The tabloids had gone from speculation to frenzy. Television stations replayed his speech on a loop, dissecting every gesture, every word. The name Sophia Donald was now known far beyond the mansion walls. Sophia, though radiant in her pregnancy glow, felt the weight of this sudden fame pressing down on her like a suffocating blanket. She could barely step into the garden without catching the flash of a long-lens camera hiding in the distance. Still, inside Vincent's arms, she felt untouchable, safe even when the world outside spat venom. But not everyone shared Vincent's conviction. In the sleek conference hall of Jeffrey Holdings, a gathering of shareholders and board members waited, their sharp suits and colder stares piercing through the glass table. They murmured of reputation, of shareholder confidence, of the danger of scandal. Henry Jeffrey, always polished and calculating, leaned forward with a voice smooth as steel. "Vincent, this entanglement with the maid is costing us billions in market perception. If you cannot control your impulses, you risk bringing everything we've built crashing down." The room fell silent, waiting for Vincent's reply. He didn't hesitate. Standing tall, his dark eyes burned with defiance. "This isn't an entanglement. Sophia is the woman I love. She's carrying my child. If any of you think I'll abandon her to save a few headlines, then you never understood me at all. Some of the older members shifted uncomfortably. Others glanced toward Henry for guidance. But the younger executives, many of them watching Vincent with admiration, saw strength where the old guard saw weakness. Meanwhile, Sophia retreated into the sanctuary of her room, decorated in calming creams and soft blues by Vincent's hand-picked designers to ease her stress. But she wasn't hiding. She wrote letters to herself, affirmations to remain strong in the face of criticism. She thought of her child, of the life growing within her, and whispered promises that they would never feel unloved or unwanted. Still, she worried. Would Vincent regret this? Would the empire suffocate him until he turned cold? When Vincent entered her room that night, exhausted yet glowing with resolve, she asked him in a trembling voice, "Are you sure I'm worth all this?" He crossed the room in 2 strides, kneeling before her, placing his hand gently on her stomach. "You're not worth all this, Sophia. You're worth more. My empire, my reputation, even my name, none of it matters without you." Her tears fell, not of fear but of relief, as he kissed her palm tenderly. But beyond the mansion gates, business sharks circled. Rivals whispered to the press, portraying Vincent as a reckless man blinded by lust, his judgment compromised. Reporters framed Sophia as a gold digger who had trapped a billionaire with a baby. Headlines screamed, "From maid to mistress, Sophia Donald's billion-dollar trap." The cruelty cut deep, but Vincent shielded her, refusing to let her see the worst of it. Yet even he couldn't block out the sting of betrayal when one of his closest friends leaked private details to the press. One evening, as cameras flashed outside their gates and critics speculated inside boardrooms, Vincent and Sophia stood together on the balcony. The city glittered below, loud and merciless, but here they held hands, leaning into each other. Sophia whispered, "We'll never have peace, will we?" Vincent's jaw tightened, but his voice was steady. "Maybe not, but we'll have love. And I'd rather fight the world with you than live in peace without you." She smiled softly, her hand resting on her growing belly. For the first time since the chaos began, she believed him completely. Months passed, and the storm of scandal slowly began to quiet. Headlines that once mocked Sophia's name now turned into softer stories about the love that survived scandal. Where there had been venom, there was now curiosity, and even admiration. Inside the Jeffrey mansion, life had changed. Sophia's belly grew round and full with each passing day. Vincent never missed a doctor's appointment, his hand always clutching hers during every scan, his eyes glistening with awe as he watched the tiny heartbeat flicker on the screen. But love was not without cost. Vincent's boardroom had grown colder, rivals circled hungrily, and whispers still haunted every public appearance. Yet through it all, he never once let go of Sophia's hand. It was a stormy night when Sophia went into labor. Rain hammered against the glass walls of the mansion, thunder rolling like drums of fate. Vincent rushed her to the private wing of the hospital, refusing to leave her side. Hours passed, her face pale, her fingers gripping his hand tightly. Fear clawed at Vincent's chest as he whispered over and over, "Stay with me, Sophia. Please, stay with me." And then, as the storm outside began to calm, the cry of new life filled the room. A baby boy, small but strong, was placed in Sophia's arms. Tears streamed down her cheeks as Vincent kissed her forehead, his own heart overwhelmed. "He's perfect," she whispered. "Just like his mother," Vincent replied, voice breaking with joy. Weeks later, the gates of the Jeffrey estate opened not to paparazzi or protesters, but to well-wishers. Friends, business allies, and even cautious board members came to see the child who had silenced scandal with innocence. The baby boy became a symbol, not of shame but of rebirth. Sophia, once whispered about as a maid, now stood tall as the partner of a billionaire, cradling their son with quiet dignity. Vincent, always by her side, no longer cared for the opinions of the world. His empire still stood, but more importantly, his family was unshakable. 1 year later, the Jeffrey estate was filled with laughter. Their baby, now toddling with unsteady steps, clutched at Sophia's skirts while Vincent lifted him high into the air, the child's giggles echoing through the grand halls. Sophia, watching them with tears of joy, realized something she had once doubted. She was no longer just the maid. She was a wife, a mother, and the woman who had turned a billionaire's lonely empire into a home. Vincent pulled her close, their child between them, and kissed her with the same fire that had begun everything in that bathroom long ago. "Sophia," he whispered, "I thought I had it all. Until I met you. You're my empire now. You and our son, my forever." And as the sun set over the skyline, their love, born of scandal, tested by fire and crowned by family, stood unbroken, a legacy that would last for generations. If you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe. See you again in the next story. Thank you for watching.